Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Champions of Inspiration. This is going to be a great show. I just know it is. Why? Because I got a great friend on with us. Now, she is a resilience and encouragement speaker and coach. She's a domestic violence survivor. I just love her humility as she's sharing her experiences and going through this. And quite frankly, impressed by the courage that she's had coming through all this. Jamie Wright, thanks for joining us on Champions of Inspiration.
Yes, Scott, it's my absolute honor, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, you've got a unique story. Now, we knew each other prior to me learning of some of the other instances in your life, not such special ones. From that side. So I know that you were striving to learn and just be as good as you could be, prior to some of the other stuff, and we'll get into that. But what put you on your path to just want to learn and be the best you could be?
Oh, wow. What a beautiful question, Scott. Well, before this last opportunity to see just how strong and resilient I am through the power of my creator, before then, my passion to be the show up in the world to be the best version of myself was twofold. First is I'm a believer, and I've always have tried my very best to live a life that people can look at and say, I don't know what she has, but I want it. And that wanting it, not really just understanding that want is just the love of Christ without being a Bible thumper. And the second thing that's always driven me to strive is making my grandmother proud.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I strong believer myself, but a strong believer in not my job to convert anybody. I'm not in the convincing and converting business. I am in the living my beliefs and being a living example business.
Beautiful. That and so am I. I try very, very hard not to, as I say, be a Bible thumper, but like you just alluded to, Scott, is just allowing my life to be an example of how good Christ is, my creator is. And one of the opportunities when I became 14 years old that I had, now that I understand it, was to overcome teenage pregnancy and overcome the obstacles that I faced, being 13 years old, coming home pregnant, 14, having a child, 16, emancipated, living in the projects with my child. I was just very, very sure that even though I was facing those obstacles, and this is one of the reasons why I try my very best to make my grandmother proud, is she's always instilled in myself and my cousins and my sisters, our family, is lean not into my own understanding, but in all of my ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct my path. So even though my path was crooked and all over the place, God, I've always believed that I am here for a reason.
Yeah, isn't that the fact? I actually was a guest on somebody else's show this morning, and we were talking, it happened to be Stroke TV, Aaron Avila, and there was a reason that I've had a full-blown cerebellar stroke. I believe God's plan and timing is perfect. Don't necessarily understand it all the time. Don't necessarily, it doesn't say that everything is great and perfect and all that all the time, but it says all things come together for the good of those who love him and are called to his purpose. So very similarly, while we don't necessarily understand the exact path all the time, the good news is there sure seems to be recovery from that path if we stray. Is that correct?
Very correct. Absolutely correct. Yes, absolutely, Scott. And if I am definitely a testament of God's grace, of his mercy, of his recovery, of his, I don't care what we do, how we do it, who we do it with. If we honestly repent and turn from those ways, He's got us, and it's beautiful. I am a testament of that.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, we knew each other up in Dallas, and then you moved down to Houston. You had a not so pleasant situation, right? If you could share what you're willing to share on that. Again, I'm always amazed at your humility in sharing your experiences.
Absolutely. I'd be honored to. And one of the reasons that I'm even really stumbling over my words in your show, Scott, is I'm still in awe. I never would have imagined when we first met in Dallas that I'd be on your show, reminded of these words of encouragement that you sent me right after I transitioned out of the shelter here in Houston, that we would be standing here right now. So thank you again for having me on your show. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for not judging my situation, but showing your love of Christ through yourself and your wife by asking me my address and sending me, the cards and the books and in your book in one of the most trying times I've had. So, Scott, you knew me when I was in Dallas, and I thank God that our paths crossed, and several other people that I knew before I've had this opportunity to be where I am now. Because to see me and where I am now, people would not believe my story prior to. So to make a long story short, in 2018, met this amazing ordained minister, retired Army firefighter, tall, dark, and handsome gentleman in Dallas. We dated for about 1.5 years, got engaged, exchanged vows there in Fort Worth. And in February of 2020, after we exchanged vows, I left Dallas. So we were going to do amazing things, right? So I leave Dallas, I leave the place where we met, I leave, all of my friends, a couple of my family members, and I relocate to Houston with my husband. And everything was fine. When I moved in February, the pandemic happened in March, the world's shutting down. We're all like, everybody's going crazy in the uncertainty. And by April, I was hopeless, broken, and homeless as a result of domestic violence. I am definitely one of those cases, or a part of the statistics that the world is seeing as a result of the pandemic and the stressors of domestic violence and violence, period. Never in a million years, Scott, would have thought that with the level of education I have, with the career that I have, with the love that I have had for my husband, and still have, because that's what I'm committed to do. And just knowing that I knew that was what I thought God had ordained me to do, and was to move and build his kingdom with this tall, dark, and fine, handsome man, that I never ever would have thought that I would be in a homeless shelter in the face and in the wake of the pandemic. But that's where I found myself.
And there were some very unfortunate domestic abuse issues. I know some painful physical abuse, which actually led you to speak out and use the experience and use your voice, being interviewed on 60 Minutes and being able to take, obviously a very difficult, very personal situation, and be of service to others. Why did that become so important?
It became important. And it became important when I transitioned out of the shelter in July, because I was in the women's shelter for about 3 months. It became apparent to me, Scott, that my Creator had allowed me to overcome so that I could be the voice to help others, not only survivors and victims of domestic violence, but also the partners that see them, like that find themselves committing the violence, is that my creator was using me and my story to shed light in hopes of opening up the hard conversations to provide the healing that many of us need. Because what I know now is hurt people hurt people. And I was at a seminar and the Holy Spirit spoke so clear to me. I'm thinking I'm in a seminar to start back building my business, right? So I could, gain my financial independence and get back up on my feet after becoming homeless. But the Holy Spirit quickened me super quick. And he said, oh, I allowed you to not only survive the pandemic, survive homelessness and shame, and this is what you're going to do. And I quickly was like, no, I am called to speak life into this situation that, like we were talking earlier, there is recovery. Don't care who you did it with, what you did, how you did it. I don't care if you're a victim of domestic violence or a victim of molestation or childhood pregnant, teenage pregnant, whatever it is. If we make the decision to overcome that and we start to heal and get that healing, then as believers, even non-believers, it is our fundamental responsibility, Scott, to reach back and help the next person. So that's what pushed me.
That's awesome. Again, one of the things that I share often is, in fact, had this conversation yesterday. Somebody said, what's her greatest failure? And I said, I haven't had one yet. Now, it doesn't mean I haven't done things wrong, doesn't mean things haven't worked out, but failure really only comes when the word quit comes involved, and everything really has that opportunity to become a learning event, something that can be then taken and passed along to be of service to another. And quite frankly, I think, personally, I think that's one of the main reasons we're on the planet to begin with, is to be of service to another. So how do you take the obvious, or what would seem to me to be very obvious, personal nature of hurt, and move it aside enough to turn it into fuel to be of service to another or to lift somebody else up? How do you flip that switch?
Beautiful question. How did I flip the switch? Specifically, as it relates to domestic violence, it's touched my life, my entire life.
Okay.
And I just refuse to sit on the sidelines and not have the hard conversation, in knowing that it's touching other young people's life, little people's lives that have no say in it, and that is touching other people's lives. And now that I'm healed, and now that I understand, I did the self-work, not blaming my ex and not blaming the world, but worked on, Jamie, why did you accept the abuse? That opened up for me. It goes back to my what I said just a second ago, and what you said, Scott. It's my fundamental responsibility to be of service to others. I don't care what kind of violence, because all of us, frankly, what I understand now that I'm a domestic violence advocate, all of us have hurt.
Yeah.
In some areas or another. And it's not unless and until we start to share our stories, not from a victim standpoint, but share our stories from an overcoming standpoint, will we really, I personally believe, receive the freedom and the deliverance and live the abundant life that we are designed to live. So to know that I'm in a position, and my creator has given me a platform to speak my truth in a way that provides the opportunity for healing, I can't imagine not doing it. And ultimately, all I want to hear is, well done, my good and faithful servant. And ultimately, Scott, when I get to the higher high, I want to go empty.
Yeah. Well, Les Brown, a good friend, says, play full, die empty. right? So totally get that. You know, again, I mean, I applaud you. I congratulate you for the selflessness that it takes to set some of that aside. Now that can't be easy. You said you did the inner work, or you did the work yourself. What kind of work did you do? What does that mean, so that people can have an understanding?
Yeah, beautiful question. Mm. Looking back at how we met, and when you shared with me that you walk with a limp because of your incident that you had, and having the opportunity to speak to a couple of other people that over, and this is even before 2020.
Mhm.
I'm just like so humble about that. But the work for me was and still is understanding my childhood trauma through therapy. I pray, and then I also get up off my knees and do my therapy with my therapist. And she, for the past maybe 2 years, I've been doing cognitive behavioral therapy, where it looks at the formation of our brain, and it's helping me to reframe the trauma that I've experienced as a little girl. And so what I recognize is I can't rip those traumatic experiences out of my head, but with the tools that I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn through therapy and through my self-development courses, like, Landmark Forum. I'm going to a seminar next week with Dr. Delatoro McNeil in Tampa, and we're going to do these trust exercises, just making sure that I invest into myself, especially now, Scott, that I'm a domestic violence advocate. Oftentimes people pull on me, and I'm pouring, and I'm very mindful, as my therapist said, and even as Bishop Jake said, like years ago, I went to the Potter's House for years when I lived in Dallas. Don't pour from an empty cup. So the work for me personally has been prayer and therapy, self-development classes, reading, lots of books, especially your book.
Appreciate that.
Yes, and I was going back to, like, reminding myself of some of the highlights that I had read too. It's almost 3 years ago, Scott, that you gave this book to me, in the word balance, the acronym balance that you put in your book. I was like, yeah, the believe in a higher source, those type of just like affirmations, those type of reminders, Scott, for me has brought me, and I still have my not so good days. It brought me and it brings me through. That's
well, it's interesting. So what do you do when you have a not so good day?
Really good question. So depending on why I'm having the not so good day, because it's levels to this thing.
There's no doubt.
Every single day I listen to positive messages, whether it's from Bishop or Les, or I'm always pouring positive things into me. Sometimes I just, if I don't feel like getting out of the bed and I don't have any responsibilities, Scott, I allow myself that time to be not okay.
Okay.
And I might cry, depending on, what, because I'm still very much, my situation just happened in 2020. So I'm still very much reconciling what I thought my life was going to look like with what it is now. And so if I'm feeling sad about some things that happened in the past, or some things that I feel like I could have did or should have done different, I might cry. And I cry. Sometimes I cry so much that I have to turn the pillow around and cry on the other side. And then I wipe my tears and I get up.
Yeah.
I try my very best not to miss sermons, my church, whether, like, I was in Dallas supporting my friend last weekend with my best friend, and I had the honor of going to the Potter's House Sunday and getting my cup filled up. So I'm okay now with not being okay.
Well, I think that's a really healthy point. Is I've got a group, that my online community, called Be the First Stone. And be the first stone is be the first stone to start the ripple. And if you're not the first stone, be the second stone to continue the ripple. And I think one of the things that's come through, I last week had a hip replaced, and I literally feel different coming out of chronic pain, coming out of a variety of different things. But we were talking about it last night, that I feel different, and there's a knowingness, or um, there's a certainty coming out, but there's also a, you know what, how much stuff has been masked that has now been let go of, right? And I think that that's at least that's what I'm taking from what you're saying, is dropping the mask and being okay with what's behind it.
Beautiful. Oh, that's powerful. Powerful. And what that equals is authenticity.
Yeah, very much so. Like I say, it was funny because one of our members said last night that she personally, had looked at the word business and said, but I've really figured out what I've been doing and how I've been interpreted as busyness. And so we all had an amazing conversation on busyness versus business. But I think it's the same personally. We tend to get caught up again behind the mask, or we don't want to let everybody in. And I think people have been far more impacted by the result of the pandemic than I think we've allowed ourselves to understand or agree to. So again, I applaud you in the work that you're doing, in the constant personal work, but then sharing that work with others to help encourage them to bust through their situations. So what are your grand plans going from here? How are you going to change the world?
How am I going to change the world, Scott? Well, the homeless shelter that I had to seek shelter and safety at, I now serve on the board of directors for the Houston Area Women's Center. That's where I was.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's a God thing right there. So continuing to not only share my story of overcoming domestic violence and teenage pregnancy, but also what I've recognized now is that I'm purposed to lean into the legislation part. So my grand, plan, I'm still asking my creator, my daddy, about it, is to is one of the reasons I've gone through what I've gone through is to help shape the laws. And so I applied and was accepted into the Texas Women University to have a women in politics program out of Denton.
Very nice.
And completed that in May, and did a beautiful internship and connected with a state representative here in the Houston area. So definitely my grand plan is to lean into the legislation part of just violence against women, period. Specifically to share my story in that arena, to highlight the importance of providing resources to abusive partners, Scott, because what I recognize is that we cannot truly address violence, domestic violence, by providing services only to the survivor. We have to provide services to the partner that is causing the harm. If we truly want to eradicate domestic violence. And I feel like that I'm in a position, not only with my education, but with my life experiences, and then with my heart posture. Then finishing my book, Scott, that I've been writing for like 10 years.
Well, sometimes it takes a little while. That's okay. It's amazing how those downloads come in, and all of a sudden you get that little burst, right?
Yes. And just continuing to share my story in a way that provides, encouragement and enable people to find that inner strength. Because if this little girl from Northeast Oklahoma can keep trucking along, keeping a licking and keep ticking, I know that everybody else can. It's just a matter of making the decision. So reminding people that I have the honor of coming in contact with of that.
I think, again, a very important point. A while back, I wrote an article entitled "Everything Starts with a Decision," and decision comes from the Latin decidere, to cut off any other choice. And so I think it's, again, tremendously admirable and important what you're saying there about making better quality decisions, testing those decisions out, taking the action that it takes to move forward, and going from there. So when are we going to see that book out, by the way?
Oh, Scott, I shouldn't even brought it up. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. When I sit down to write it, things come up. I get the opportunity to share my story on beautiful platforms like yours. I get the opportunity, like I spoke alongside Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in Senator McCornan.
Yep.
Support of the Violence Against Women's Act. So like, I don't know. I say that, look, I'm running rackets. Excuses. It's either results or reasons. I don't know.
Well, you keep on, again, I congratulate you. You keep on gaining the experiences, and your desire and willingness to share those experiences and continue to learn from them and continue to share them, quite frankly. How can people get a hold of you to learn more about you and what you're doing, and actually aid you in your task? Because I'd like to solicit some support for you because you're doing such great work.
Oh, wow, Scott, thank you. How people can support me is just spreading the message. I'm on all social media platforms as Jamie R. Wright, and that's JAMIE, middle initial R, last name Wright, WRIGHT. Please subscribe and follow me. I am intentional about keeping my social media upbeat and informational, especially around what's going on in the community and around resources that are available for people that are experiencing domestic violence. So definitely please follow me on my social media. How you can help support is, like, listen, if you're experiencing domestic violence, again, I don't care if you're the partner or the survivor, reach out for help. There is no condemnation, no shame around saying, hey, I'm not okay. There are a ton of resources, Scott, that I didn't recognize were available until I was put in the situation. One specifically is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It's free, it's confidential. There are trained advocates that will help us through, or, I say us because I'll always, consider myself a survivor.
Right.
Help us with the tools. I mean, these people are trained. This is their heart posture. They are trained to help the individual that reaches out make the best decision for them. So seek help. Remember that you're not alone. If you need support around domestic violence, I'm a direct message on Facebook or Instagram or away. Again, it's Jamie R. Wright on my social media, all platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. I have a website. It's my first and last name, www.jamierwright.com. And so that's it, Scott, that's it. I can be found. I'm easily found.
That's awesome. How about one day, we're hard to believe we've run through our time, but how about one last little piece of wisdom for everybody that we can leave them with?
Oh, wow, there's so much. Oh yeah. You may have been victimized, but you are absolutely not a victim.
That's powerful. No doubt about it. Victim or victor, right?
That's it.
The choice is yours.
The choice is yours.
Jamie, thanks for joining us here on Champions of Inspiration. Very inspirational show. Thank you for your willingness to share all your experiences and your expertise. God bless.
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you. God bless you too.
And thank you all for joining us on Champions Inspiration. We'll see you again tomorrow, exact same time. God bless.